Hello, wrestling fans. Welcome to another episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic, episode 304. I am your host, Lance Brock, for Monday, August 1st. I wish I could do a good woo, or else that's how I would start off this episode today, because I'm going to be talking about Ric Flair's last match from last night. And I have to admit, the undercard matches, very good, very solid, maybe even great. But there were some parts in the main event last night where I did get a little worried. I'll talk about that again a little later on. But now let's get on to the show from last night, presented by Jim Crockett Promotions, back for one night only. Or at least I think one night only anyway. I have to admit, back in 2012, when I started this podcast, I never thought that I would be recapping a new show from Jim Crockett Promotions. That, like they say in pro wrestling, never say never. And we start off with the pre-show. Red Narita defeated Yui Mura. And then we see Frank the Clown get in the ring and cut a promo, a heel promo, of course. And then he is interrupted by Jacob Fatu. And then he goes to leave quick. And then Mick Foley makes his way out, decks him, and then sends him back in the ring for Fatu to get him. And then we have the Bunkhouse Battle Royal. And during this one, there's some, I know, current promotions from today's pro wrestling were going to be involved in this show, but I didn't know promotions from the past were going to be represented. Like USWA, we have one half of PG-13 Wolfie D in this Battle Royal. And also representing WCW, we have Crowbar. And then in this one, there's also a GCW Invasion. And then the two final superstars in the match are Mance Warner and Bully Ray. And it's Mance Warner winning, unfortunately. Now, I know he's real popular on the indies, but to be honest, I haven't really gotten into him. Not too big of a fan. And time for the main card. Jim Crockett Promotions, Ric Flair's last match, live from Nashville, Tennessee. The Municipal Auditorium. The commentators, the two main commentators, I should say, for tonight, Tony Schiavone and David Crockett. I know, even they talked about how they weren't very good, especially David Crockett don't know a lot of the younger wrestlers, but they had somebody from the promotion being represented in that match help them out on commentary. And we got a very good introduction, or intro video, I should say, narrated by the legendary commentator Bob Caudle. Very good. And our opening match, we have representing Impact Wrestling. And on commentary for this one, we have Scott D'Amore, is the Motor City Machine Guns taking on the American Wolves. Great match, just like I thought it would be. Fast paced, a lot of action in this one. Is the Machine Guns picking up the win. Chris Sabin pins Eddie Edwards at 11 minutes 6 seconds. Next up, representing MLW Major League Wrestling, Joe Dombrowski is on commentary for this one. The British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith Jr. taking on Killer Cross with Scarlett Bordeaux in his corner. Killer Cross gets the win here. Pretty good match. Pretty kind of short, only 5 minutes 43 seconds. But pretty good match though. And then during the night, we get some video comments sending well wishes to Ric Flair from people like Dixie Carter, Trish Stratus, JBL, Kurt Angle, Sting, Jim Ross, Cody Rhodes, Nick Aldis, Booker T, Shawn Michaels, Jake the Snake Roberts, Will Sasso, Doug Dillinger, who is also, believe it or not, working security for the show. The Total Package Lex Luger. Those videos were also very nice to see. Next up, we see Ian Riccaboni make his way to the commentary desk, and is Kensuke Takeshita taking on Alan Angels, Nick Wayne, Jonathan Gresham in a 4-way match. Good one. Another one that was kept kind of short though. Still pretty good match. 5 minutes 44 seconds. Jonathan Gresham winning this one. Next up is a special tag team match. Nick Aldis is on commentary for this one, and it is Ricky and Kerry Morton with Robert Gibson in their corner, the Rock and Roll Express, taking on the team of Brock Anderson and Brian Pillman Jr. with Arn Anderson in their corner, the Four Horsemen. Good match. Got the new generations, I guess you could call them, of, well, Ricky's still in there, but the Rock and Roll Express versus the Four Horsemen. Brock Anderson pins Kerry Morton, 6 minutes 55 seconds. Good match here. Next up on Ric Flair's last match is a Triple H Lucha Scramble match. And Bandito, Black Taurus, Laredo Kid, and Ray Phoenix. This one was really good. A lot of lucha high-flying action in this one. Ray Phoenix is victorious. 11 minutes 53 seconds in this one. Could kind of tell it was hard for Tony and David to keep up a little bit. Dombrowski was on commentary for this one, I believe. And the Impact World Championship is on the line next. Josh Alexander versus Jacob Fatu. Impact versus MLW. And they are having a very good match, which was expected. But unfortunately, this one is interrupted by the major players, Brian Myers and Matt Cardona, who now took his neck brace off, apparently isn't injured anymore. They ruined a great match, but then we see an appearance by Diamond Dallas Page, and he hits Cardona, with a diamond cutter. And then we go back for an interview with Jeff Jarrett. And then we see his father, Jerry Jarrett. And then when we go in the locker room, we see Jerry the King Lawler. And they talk about, and I have heard Jeff Jarrett say this in interviews many times, that he got the strut from Jackie Fargo. So Jarrett asked him who invented the strut, and all three of them at the same time say Jackie Fargo. Next up, Ring of Honor vs. MLW, the Von Erichs taking on the Briscoes. Another solid tag team match here, I thought, is the Briscoes getting the win with the Froggy Bow, 7 minutes 55 seconds. Ross and Marshall Von Erich, impressive in this one, I thought. And the Impact Knockouts Championship is on the line. Deonna Purrazzo, Rachel Ellering, and Jordynne Grace. And in the opening minutes of this one, there was kind of a scary situation almost. It looked like Rachel Ellering was injured. Grace went to roll her up, and it looked like her ankle rolled. So she rolled right over to the apron, but she got back in it and appeared to be okay, luckily. And Jordynne Grace submits Rachel Ellering in this one at 9 minutes 17 seconds to get the win and retain the Impact Knockouts Championship. And now at this time, we see The Undertaker in the front row sitting next to Mick Foley, along with Michelle McCool and their daughter. And now it is time for the main event of the evening. The ring announcer, longtime WCW ring announcer, and now currently for Impact Wrestling, David Penzer, is Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal taking on Andrade El Idolo and the Nature Boy Ric Flair. And this one, and I was kind of surprised about it starting off, was Ric Flair and Jeff Jarrett the first two in the ring. And surprisingly, I thought Ric Flair was in the ring more than I expected him to be during this one. And there was one spot when him and Jarrett were on the floor and Flair got busted open. He was the blood coming down. He started holding his chest, which looked kind of scary, to be honest. But then he just suckered Jay Lethal in and poked him in the eye. And there was another spot right around that time, actually, when they were on the floor. Megan, Ric Flair's oldest daughter, her and his son-in-law, Conrad Thompson, from all the podcasts, I'm sure everybody knows, and his wife, Wendy, and Megan and Karen Jarrett, got into it. And like I said, Flair was in there for a while. Jarrett and Lethal dominated him for quite a bit. And then he is looking in pretty rough shape. And Conrad threw some brass knucks into Andrade. And at this point, Andrade was trying to get the brass knuckles on to Flair's hand, but it just wasn't working. And he couldn't get them onto his hand. And then finally he did, and Flair knocked out Jarrett with the knucks and then got on the figure four. But since Jarrett was knocked out, they counted the shoulders down for the 3 count. Ric Flair and Andrade victorious, 26 minutes, 46 seconds, which was expected. And then we get some post-match comments from Ric Flair after the match. Thanked all the fans and his family and friends. Went over, hugged the Undertaker, hugged Mick Foley, hugged Bret Hart. And the match, definitely not the best wrestling match in the world, but I wasn't expecting that, and really shouldn't have been expecting. But like I said, I got worried a little bit. But what I have read now is that once Flair got backstage, he was checked out by all the doctors there, and luckily was doing good, was just hungry, wanted to get something to eat. He talked about going out with Kid Rock later after the show, so I'm sure he probably did that last night. So overall, Ric Flair's last match as a show, the return of Jim Crockett Promotions, I thought it was definitely entertaining. Main event, I did enjoy some parts of it, like when Flair had Jarrett in the corner, was doing the chops, and then Lethal tried to sneak up on him, but then Flair got him with the low blow, classic Ric Flair. And I was worried. That's the only bad thing, but he is doing okay now. That's good. And the rest of the show was very good as well. And I don't know if anybody else will agree with me about this, but I actually enjoyed it more than SummerSlam. And I enjoyed SummerSlam. Thought it was a pretty good show, but I'd have to say between the two, I enjoyed the show last night a little more. Not saying it was a whole lot better, but it was better in my opinion. And definitely a thumbs up show in my opinion. Don't know if anybody else will agree with me on that. And before I finish this episode of 360 Wrestling Podcast, she wasn't on camera last night, but Charlotte Flair was backstage, and Rey Mysterio and his son Dominic were backstage as well. And of course, as could see on camera, that the Undertaker was there, Mick Foley, Bret Hart, Al Snow. So It definitely looked like a fun night of pro wrestling. A special night, obviously. And let's see here. Also backstage was Michael P.S. Hayes, the Nasty Boys, the Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant, Rikishi, the Hurricane, Mickie James, Miro and Lana, Tom Pritchard, Mickie James. They were all backstage, not shown on camera. And now coming out of SummerSlam, Ronda Rousey has suspended, or WWE has suspended Ronda Rousey, obviously storyline, for after the match when she locked in the armbar on Liv Morgan, and the referee also fined as well. And now apparently Becky Lynch is injured with a separated shoulder. And tonight, Monday Night Raw, apparently Triple H has something planned for tonight. His second week of running creative. And that's all for this episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic, episode 305. And I think I said 304 at the beginning, but actually it is 305. Sorry about that. Always made mistakes here on 360 Wrestling Fanatic, unfortunately. And thank you for tuning in, though. Hope to, who knows, might have a recap of tonight's Raw. You never know, so stay tuned. You can listen to 360 Wrestling Podcasts wherever you get your podcast from, or on YouTube. Go and listen there. But the main site to listen to is on Spreaker. And Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the good stuff. Also, 360 Wrestling Podcast at gmail.com. That's the email. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions, or if you want to tell me what you thought of SummerSlam, or what you thought of Ric Flair's last match, or just anything going on in pro wrestling right now, you can let me know at the email 360 Wrestling Podcast at gmail.com. Or if you want to be the nicest, awesome person in the world, you can help support 360 Wrestling Podcast two ways. Anchor.fm slash 360-wrestling-podcast 360, or streamlabs.com slash 360 Wrestling Podcast. You don't have to donate anything, but if you want to and you can spare some extra cash, that's anchor.fm slash 360-wrestling-podcast 360, or streamlabs.com slash 360 Wrestling Podcast to support 360 Wrestling Podcast. Make it better, bigger, and you don't have, like I said, you don't have to, but it would be very much appreciated, and you'll definitely get a big thumbs up from me, and you'll be thanked on the podcast too as well, if I remember, hopefully. And that's it. Thank you very much once again for tuning in to 360 Wrestling Fanatic. Until next time, I am Lance, and I am a wrestling fanatic.